Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She didn't raise her voice when she said it. She didn't have to. Her words carried the kind of quiet contempt that cuts deeper than any scream. Be a man, she said, standing in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. Her tone as sharp as the glint of her wedding ring. And stop insisting on intimacy like some desperate teenager. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. The air went still, heavy. The coffee maker hummed behind me, the smell of burnt grounds filling the silence. I stared at her, trying to decide if she was joking, if this was just another argument that would fade by morning. But her face didn't move. She looked at me like I was a stranger who'd overstayed his welcome. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, turned off the machine, and left the room. That was the last time I tried to reach for her. We'd been married 9 years. Somewhere around year 6, the warmth started to fade. At first, it was small things, the way she'd pull away when I tried to hug her, the excuses about being tired, stressed, busy. But eventually, it wasn't just distance. It was rejection disguised as power. She liked having control of when, how, and if affection happened. And I, stupidly, kept chasing it like it was proof that we were still okay. That night, I slept on the far edge of the bed. She scrolled on her iPhone beside me, smiling faintly at something on the screen. When she finally put it down, she didn't even look my way. I watched her fall asleep, her breathing steady, calm. It hit me then. She wasn't cold because she was angry. She was cold because she didn't need me anymore. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. She made coffee, hummed softly, and asked if I could pick up groceries on my way home from work. I said yes, as if the night before hadn't burned a hole straight through the middle of me. But that quiet yes wasn't obedience. It was the start of something else. When I got home later, she was on the couch watching Netflix, wrapped in a blanket I'd bought her last Christmas. She didn't look up. I put the groceries away, washed my hands, and stood there for a long time, watching her reflection in the TV screen. That was when it clicked. She thought she'd won. So, I decided to stop trying. No anger, no scenes, no pleading. Just nothing. I'd give her exactly what she asked for. No attention, no affection, no effort. If she wanted distance, I'd show her what true silence felt like. And as I turned out the lights that night, I realized something I'd never dared to admit before. Indifference is the most powerful language a person can speak. She just didn't know yet how fluent I could be in it. Silence has a strange way of turning into power. At first, it felt unnatural not to reach for her, not to fill the empty space between us with words or gestures. But after a few days, the quiet started to feel right, clean, controlled, almost peaceful. I woke up, made my own breakfast, and didn't bother asking if she wanted coffee. I came home from work later than usual, kept my voice calm and my answers short. She noticed. She just didn't know what to do with it. It was a Friday evening when she first tried to break the new rhythm. She walked into the kitchen while I was putting dishes away and said casually, "You've been distant lately." I didn't look up. I just said, "You asked for space." The sound of the plates clinking filled the pause that followed. When I finally glanced at her, she was frowning, not because she was hurt, but because the balance had shifted. For the first time in a long time, she didn't have control of the silence. I did. Over the next week, I changed small things. I stopped waiting for her to come to bed. I stopped checking her phone when she left it face down on the counter. I deleted the couple photos from my social media, not in anger, but as an act of release. At work, I started staying later, taking on extra projects. One of my coworkers, Jason, noticed and joked that I was finally living like a single man. I laughed. He didn't know how close he was to the truth. She kept testing me. Small comments about how quiet I'd become. Questions that sounded innocent but were really hooks. "You don't touch me anymore. You don't seem interested." Each one was bait. I didn't take it. Instead, I'd smile faintly, nod, and go back to what I was doing. It drove her insane. The woman who once told me to stop asking for intimacy was now the one searching for it. One night, I came home to find her dressed up, makeup done, hair perfect. She said she was going out with friends. I just said, "Have fun." No jealousy, no curiosity. That startled her more than if I'd argued. She hesitated, waiting for me to react, but I didn't. I went back to my laptop and started typing. That was the first night she texted while she was out. Don't wait up. I didn't. I turned off the lights and went to bed early. She came home late, expecting a confrontation, and found none. The quiet had become my weapon, and it was sharper than anything I'd ever said aloud. The first real crack appeared a week later. She came home early from work, still in her office clothes, and found me at the dining table finishing dinner. She looked surprised that I hadn't waited for her. For years, I'd made it a ritual, setting the table, asking if she wanted wine, pretending that sharing a meal could fix what was broken. Not that night. I'd eaten alone, washed my own plate, and left hers untouched on the counter. She asked, carefully, "Did you eat already?" I said, "Yeah." Nothing more. The simplicity of it made her blink. She lingered there, waiting for something, an explanation, an apology, but none came. Eventually, she went upstairs, and I heard her pacing. That was the sound of her control starting to slip. Over the next few days, the dynamic flipped. She began noticing me again. Her glances lasted longer. The woman who once rolled her eyes at my presence now studied me like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't understand. I didn't feed into it. I stayed calm, consistent, detached. If she spoke, I answered briefly. If she reached out, I didn't pull away, but I didn't reach back either. One morning, I was heading out early when she followed me to the door. She said, "Are we okay?" Her tone was soft, uncertain. I met her eyes for a second and said, "You told me what you wanted." Then I left. When I drove away, I saw her reflection in the side mirror, still standing there, watching the truck pull off the driveway. At work, I noticed how much lighter I felt. I wasn't carrying the constant tension of waiting for her mood to shift. I even started having lunch with people again, something I'd avoided for months. One coworker, Rachel, asked if everything was fine at home. I told her, better than it's been in a long time. It wasn't a lie. That night, I came home late. She was on the couch watching Netflix, the same show we used to watch together, but now the glow from the TV made her look distant, almost fragile. She muted the screen when I walked in and asked if I wanted to join her. I told her I was tired and went upstairs. Lying in bed, I realized how much things had changed, not between us, but inside me. I no longer needed her approval, her affection, or her excuses. The balance had shifted completely. She'd built her power on my wanting her. Now, my indifference was quietly dismantling that power piece by piece. And the best part was, she didn't even see it happening yet. Disappearing doesn't always mean leaving the house. Sometimes it means leaving a version of yourself behind. That's what I did. I stopped being the man who tried to earn her affection, who waited for small signs of approval that never came. I became quiet, deliberate, and distant. Every move I made was measured. Every word I spoke carried purpose. She noticed, but too late. At first, she thought it was just a phase. She'd make little remarks, trying to provoke me. "You're really acting cold lately," or "You used to care more." I'd just nod, never defending myself, never giving her what she wanted. The silence between us wasn't tension anymore. It was my choice. One night, she came into the bedroom after her shower, wrapped in a towel, expecting the same man who'd once reached for her without hesitation. But I didn't look up. I just scrolled through my phone, pretending to check messages. I heard her pause, waiting for a reaction, but I gave her none. That pause stretched long enough for her confidence to falter. For the first time, she was the one standing there, wanting something I wasn't offering. The next morning, she made pancakes, something she hadn't done in months. She even made extra, her way of extending an olive branch without admitting it. I thanked her, ate quietly, and left for work early. She watched me go, confusion flickering behind her calm expression. That's when I knew she felt it, the loss of control. At work, I found a strange peace in my routine. I started hitting the gym afterward, grabbing dinner at a small diner near the office. The waitress there, a middle-aged woman named Karen, once told me I looked lighter, like I'd finally started breathing again. She was right. I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's moods anymore. That weekend, she asked if I wanted to go out for dinner. I said no, told her I had plans. I didn't explain what they were, and she didn't ask. She just stood there, trying to read me, realizing she no longer could. Later that night, I sat alone at a Starbucks, sipping black coffee and watching the street outside glow with passing headlights. I wasn't lonely. I was free. She texted me once while I sat there. "Are you coming home soon?" I stared at the message for a moment, then locked my phone without replying. My absence was teaching her the lesson she never thought she'd have to learn, that attention is only valuable when it's mutual. And mine, finally, had limits. The shift happened quietly, like a tide turning when no one's watching. My silence stopped being a reaction and became a statement. She tried to pretend nothing had changed, but everything had. Our house, once filled with her chatter, now echoed with the absence of sound. She'd talk to fill the air, random comments about work or what she saw on Facebook, but I no longer responded with the warmth she was used to. I'd nod, maybe hum an acknowledgement, then go back to what I was doing. The less I engaged, the more unsettled she became. She started to dress up more often. Dinner, errands, even trips to Target turned into small performances. Maybe it was for me, maybe for her reflection, but it didn't matter. I'd stopped being her audience. I remember one evening, she came home wearing a new dress, hair done, nails freshly painted. She waited for me to notice. I didn't. She stood in the hallway, her expression flickering between irritation and doubt. "You didn't say anything," she finally muttered. I looked up briefly and said, "You look fine." Then I went back to my laptop. That 2-second exchange broke something she couldn't name. At work, my focus sharpened. My manager noticed. He pulled me aside after a meeting and said I looked driven lately. He wasn't wrong. I had energy again, but it wasn't for her. It was for me. I began investing in a small project I'd shelved months ago, something that had potential if I gave it time. For once, the silence at home worked in my favor. I could think, plan, build. One night, I came home late, the smell of coffee still clinging to my shirt. She was sitting in the dark living room, waiting. I could tell she'd been crying. Eyes red, makeup smudged. She asked where I'd been. I said, "Working." It was the truth, just not the kind she wanted to hear. She said she felt like I was somewhere else lately. I didn't deny it. I just told her calmly, "I'm exactly where I should be." That night, she reached for me for the first time in months. Her hand found my arm in the dark, hesitant, searching. I didn't pull away, but I didn't respond either. Her touch stayed for a few seconds before she let go. The space between us grew heavier than ever, filled with everything she'd taken for granted. That was the night she realized I wasn't fighting for her anymore. And the silence, the one she'd once used as a weapon, was now mine, and it was winning. By the second month, she wasn't hiding her frustration anymore. The silence she once demanded had become unbearable for her. She tried to start small fights just to get a reaction, accusing me of being distant, selfish, even cruel. I didn't take the bait. I'd look at her calmly and say, "You asked me to stop insisting." That sentence shut her down every time. It wasn't anger she heard in my voice. It was indifference, and that's what scared her most. Her control had always relied on emotion. She needed my frustration to feel powerful, my desire to feel desired. Without that, she was left talking into a void. I gave her nothing. And nothing, I learned, is louder than shouting. At work, things started shifting too. I'd been pouring my extra hours into a small software project, a system I'd designed from scratch, built quietly in the background. When I finally presented it to my manager, he saw its potential immediately. Within weeks, they gave me a raise and a new team to develop it further. I remember sitting in the parking lot afterward, watching the sun dip behind the buildings, thinking how far I'd come without saying a word. That night, I stopped by a small Italian restaurant to celebrate alone. The waitress smiled when she brought the check and said, "You look like a man who just got good news." I told her she was right. It wasn't about the money. It was about clarity. The man I'd been before, needy, patient, waiting, was gone. When I came home, she was sitting at the table, staring at her phone. There was a faint smell of perfume in the air, the kind she used to wear on our early dates. She looked up, forcing a smile, and asked, "How was your day?" I just said, "Productive." Then I walked past her, grabbed a bottle of water, and went upstairs. The silence that followed felt like a wall dropping between us. Later that night, I heard her in the bathroom, crying quietly. Not out of guilt, out of fear. Fear of being replaced, forgotten, invisible. For years, she had built her self-worth around the idea that I would always be there, waiting, forgiving, chasing. But now she was seeing the truth. I wasn't her safety net anymore. Before turning off the lights, I looked at her sleeping beside me. Even in the dark, I could tell she wasn't resting. The woman who once told me to be a man and stop insisting was now trembling in the silence of a man who finally had. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It came in quiet fragments, like a glass cracking under slow pressure. She started coming home earlier, cooking dinner, asking if I'd eat with her. I usually said I'd already eaten. Sometimes that was true. Sometimes it wasn't. What mattered was that she never knew which. The uncertainty ate at her, and I could see it in the way she hovered around me, pretending to tidy up while watching for any sign of warmth that wasn't there anymore. Our evenings used to be filled with noise, TV shows, small talk, her endless scrolling on her iPhone while I waited for her attention. Now, the silence stretched between us like a frozen lake. She couldn't stand it. I, on the other hand, found comfort in it. It was the first time in years that peace felt possible in my own home. One night, she tried again. She said she missed how close we used to be. The irony almost made me laugh. I told her, calmly, "You wanted space. I'm giving it to you." Her lips trembled, but she didn't argue. She just sat there, staring at the table like she was trying to remember the exact moment she lost me. At work, my project had started gaining attention. A few investors were showing interest. For the first time, people were calling me the driving force behind something. I'd never thought of myself as ambitious before, but it turned out all I'd needed was quiet. That's the thing about being underestimated. When you stop trying to prove yourself, your energy shifts. It stops going toward people who don't value you and starts building something that does. Meanwhile, she was unraveling. Her friends weren't visiting anymore. Her parents called less. Even her colleagues had started keeping their distance. The woman who once prided herself on being admired was now avoided. People sensed desperation, and hers was starting to show. That weekend, she asked if I wanted to go for a drive, something we hadn't done in years. I said I had work to finish. She nodded, tried to hide the disappointment, and went upstairs. Later, I heard her crying quietly behind the closed door. The sound didn't hurt me anymore. It didn't make me want to comfort her. It only confirmed what I already knew. I'd finally become what she never believed I could be, untouchable. And as I sat there, finishing another late-night coding session on my laptop, a strange thought crossed my mind. Maybe this was what strength really looked like. Not rage, not revenge, just quiet distance that no apology could cross. The confrontation came on a Sunday morning, quiet and unexpected. She stood in the doorway of my office while I was working, her hair unbrushed, her eyes red from another sleepless night. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The only sound was the faint hum of my computer. Then she spoke, her voice trembling just enough to break the silence. "I don't understand you anymore," she said. "You don't even look at me." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. It wasn't cruelty that kept me calm, it was detachment. I told her, "You asked me to stop insisting. So I did." She looked at me like the words hit her physically. There it was, the reflection of everything she'd thrown at me, returned without anger, without volume, just truth. She tried to respond, but nothing came out. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I made a mistake," she said. "I pushed too hard." Her eyes glistened as if she expected that confession to undo what she'd done. But apologies, I'd learned, don't erase patterns. They just name them. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let her sit in the weight of her own silence. When she reached out, her hand brushed my shoulder. I didn't flinch, but I didn't return the touch either. She pulled back slowly, realizing that even my stillness wasn't invitation, it was distance. For years, I'd been the one seeking connection. Now, she was the one begging for it, and I had nothing left to give. After a long pause, she whispered, "Can we fix this?" I looked at her, steady, unmoved. "There's nothing to fix," I said. "It's already done." Her breath caught. She nodded like she understood, though I could tell she didn't. Not yet. That afternoon, I went for a drive to clear my head. The streets were quiet, the sky heavy with rain. I stopped at a diner off the highway and ate alone, watching strangers come and go. No one knew me there, and that anonymity felt like freedom. My phone buzzed once, her name flashing on the screen, but I didn't answer. When I got home later, she was sitting on the porch steps, waiting. She didn't say anything when I walked past her. She just watched me go inside, her eyes following me like she was trying to memorize a version of me she no longer recognized. And maybe she was. Because the man who once lived for her validation had finally disappeared, not in anger, but in peace. The collapse came slowly, but once it started, it didn't stop. She began showing up at my office, leaving lunch at the reception desk, just in case I forgot to eat. She texted more often, short messages at first. "How's your day? Do you need anything?" But they grew longer, heavier, like confessions disguised as conversation. I read them all. I didn't reply. I'd learned that nothing disarms someone like unanswered words. One evening, I came home and found her sitting in the living room with the lights off. The TV glowed faintly, paused on a Netflix home screen. She looked up as I entered, mascara streaked across her face. "I can't do this anymore," she said softly. "You don't even hate me. You just don't care." She was right. Hatred still ties you to someone. Indifference severs the bond completely. I stood there for a moment, not to be cruel, but because I wanted her to see it, to really see what silence looked like when it stopped being passive. I told her, "You taught me that love needs respect to survive. Once you took that away, everything else died with it." Then I walked upstairs, leaving her with the echo of her own words. She didn't leave the house for days after that. I could hear her moving around at odd hours, pacing, whispering on the phone to someone. Probably her sister. Probably trying to explain what she couldn't understand herself, that the man she dismissed was now completely beyond her reach. Meanwhile, my life was expanding. My project had taken off faster than I expected. I was getting offers, meetings, interviews. A small feature appeared online about the new platform I'd built. Colleagues congratulated me. Even Jason, the coworker who used to joke about my quiet nature, told me I looked like a different man. He was right. I was. When I came home that night, she was waiting at the door, holding the article printed out in her hand. Her eyes were wide, full of something between awe and regret. "You're really doing this?" she asked. "You've changed." I nodded. I had to. She stepped closer, voice trembling. "I don't know when I stopped seeing you." I said nothing. Her tears fell fast, hitting the floor between us. She whispered, "I wish I'd known how strong you were before I broke you." I looked at her then, calm, detached, and said quietly, "You didn't break me. You built me." Then I walked past her, leaving the door open behind me. The sound of the wind filled the space where her words used to be. The final moment wasn't explosive. It didn't come with shouting or accusations. It arrived quietly, the way all endings do, slow, inevitable, almost gentle. She asked me to meet her one last time, at a small diner outside town. I agreed, not out of curiosity, but because I wanted closure on my own terms. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a cup of untouched coffee. She looked up, and for a second, I saw the woman I used to love. The same eyes, the same nervous smile, but there was no connection left between us. Just memory. She said she'd been thinking a lot, that she finally understood how much she'd taken for granted, how my silence had shown her things she'd refused to see before. "I kept waiting for you to fight for me," she admitted. "But you stopped fighting, and that's what broke me." Her words hung there, fragile and real. I let them sit in the air, not rushing to respond. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm. "You told me to stop insisting. I just listened." She nodded slowly, her eyes filling with tears. "And now I regret it every day," she said. "You were right here, and I treated you like you didn't exist." I took a breath, leaning back in the booth. "You didn't destroy me," I said. "You forced me to rebuild. And that's something I'll never thank you for, but I'll never forget it either." She smiled faintly, broken and grateful at the same time. For the first time, I saw sincerity in her that wasn't wrapped in manipulation or pride, just human regret. When the waitress came by to refill our cups, she asked if we wanted anything else. I shook my head. The moment was complete. We both knew it. I stood up, dropped a few bills on the table, and looked at her one last time. She whispered, "Is this goodbye?" I said, "No, this is peace." Then I turned and walked out into the cool evening air. Outside, the sky was fading from gold to blue. I stood by my Ford F-150, watching the reflection of the diner lights shimmer across the hood. For years, I'd carried her shadow everywhere I went. Now it was gone. As I drove away, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Some people learn through love, others through loss. She had to lose me to understand the difference. And I had to lose her to remember who I was before she tried to define me. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it leaves quietly and never returns. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.